the heart of Dixie where the eagles fly, land of the brave where the bullets don't lie. We fought for our freedom with guns by our side. Red, white, and blue, our southern pride. Raise the flag high, let freedom ring from the rolling mountains to the flatlands. We sing, no one can take our rights. Our Second Amendment will defend our land. With every bullet we stand. We were born in the USA, land of the free, with guns in our hands. Will forever be Southern blood runs deep through our veins. We'll stand tall for America till the end of our days.
Well, hey there. I'm Sully, and as always, welcome to the Gun Club. Alrighty, we're going to go ahead and get cranked up now. Hopefully, I haven't managed to boomer up any of the audio settings on the microphone this time. I tried to be a little bit more careful, just a hair. Got quite a few things that have gone on, a few interesting legal situations that have come up, and I wanted to cover some of those. And as always, share information and a few laughs with us. While I'm waiting for people to pile on into the stream, if you would, give me a 5x5 in the chat if you can hear me. Let me know that, yes, it's actually working. Hey, is this thing on? Is this thing on? I hope it is. Had a little interesting adventure the other day. I had a person who was a friend of a friend, and the friend who I've spent a bit of time teaching some of the finer points of 2A content works with this individual, and the young lady had received a handgun from her father. Okay. And he knew that she didn't, know much about it, wasn't really an expert with it, but he knew that she was responsible enough, and he sort of got on her and said, hey, you need to get your act together and get some training before you do anything with that. So she sort of had it around in the closet, collecting dust, cobwebs. I guess she used it to prop up her shoe collection on or something. I don't know. But anyway, I've been sort of trying to drag this young lady out to the range, kicking and screaming for a while. And finally, our mutual friend was able to get her to come join us. And we took her out to the range for her, I won't say her first ever experience. She had shot a gun one time 11 years ago. I asked her what kind of gun it was, and she said, I don't know, it was a big long one. And I said, like a rifle or a shotgun? Yeah, I guess something like that. So you kind of know where I was at. We did a quick safety briefing, went over how it works, some of the fundamentals of it, of course, our 4 rules, did all that wonderful stuff, and went ahead and headed on out to the range. And she had an absolutely wonderful time and was able to successfully fire a gun without screaming or squalling or experiencing an involuntary poop in her shorts, which was good because apparently she's doing better than our applesauce brain president. So that went really well, and it was definitely kind of fun. Mary, I see you've joined us so far. Kim, I see you've wandered on into the chat. Welcome, welcome. We definitely can have a few laughs tonight, of course. Sorry, I've been a little bit of a stranger recently. Things have been kind of crazy in my world. What else is new? But there's been quite a few interesting things that have wandered through the court cases and everything else. All righty, I see Mel's wandered on into the chat. And, of course, one of my top 10 favorite Canadians of all time. I see Holly's made it to the chat. There's only about 10 people up there that I would, save from the rest of the country. Otherwise, we just sort of, I don't know. Do we take over Canada? Do we just let them go? There's, like I said, maybe 10 salvageable people. Holly would be one. Ian would be one. Jordan would be one. Probably not too many beyond that. I don't know. Holly just managed to get this notification now. Yeah, imagine how that happens. Hey, at least Rumble does send out our notifications, so that's always a good thing. Cool, Mary, we appreciate you sharing. Okay, so Holly wants us to rescue all of Alberta. I think we could do it. I really do. I mean, honestly, I've seen your prime minister, and I'm not particularly concerned. That's just saying. Anyway, there's been some really, really interesting things that have wandered through the courts recently, and I wanted to hit on a few of them. The first one definitely is a major loss, and unfortunately, well, fortunately, I'm not a resident of the state of Minnesota, and I can honestly say that, from my standpoint, Minnesota, how about we give them to Canada and we take Alberta? Holly, is that good with you? I could deal with it. We can send all them. We can send them the Somalis, and we'll take Hollies. I'm good with that. Yeah, and like I said, of course, we'd have to get Ian, but I think he's out there with you. I'm correct. I don't know. Maybe also, some of Lauren's people, but that's about all that we see. But yeah, this one's out of Minnesota, and it's a really, really bad case for Minnesota self-defense. And it occurred originally several years back, and I'll give you the quick and dirty on the case. It happened at the Minnesota Light Rail Station right by the U.S. Bank where the Minnesota Vikings play. So again, not a particularly, you would think, awful neighborhood, not really downtown Minnesota, but not downtown Minneapolis, but fairly populous area. A guy walks up onto the platform, and another individual on the platform basically suggests that, hey, why don't you come over here away from the camera and I'll cut your throat, and produces a knife, a good sized knife. So, the proper response when someone threatens you with cutting your throat, death, or great bodily harm, produces a knife, is in fairly close proximity to you. Yeah. This guy responds by drawing his machete. Apparently, in order to travel the rails in Minnesota, one needs to carry one's machete. I don't know. We can talk about the governor of Minnesota later, but it is what it is. Yeah. So he produces a machete, and he waves it at the individual with the knife and another individual who is apparently with him for maybe about a minute or so. Now, this is all pretty well caught on video. The guy was smart, didn't get out from under the video. And then a train comes in, he takes off. He was charged with felony assault. Now, assault, remember, we have assault and we have battery in most states. Assault is putting someone in fear that you're going to do something. Battery is actually doing it. So if someone comes up and they say, I'm going to hit you, that could be assault, even if they don't follow through on it. Battery would be the actual striking. So they said he assaulted them with a weapon, the machete, so they made it a felony level assault. He claimed self-defense. He said, look, the guy waved a knife around, said he was going to cut my throat. I was in fear for my safety, and I whipped out my machete. This does not seem like that much of a stretch. It really doesn't. But the Minnesota court system has managed to set self-defense back immeasurably. And this gentleman was actually convicted, stating that, he could have retreated instead. He got sentenced to a 39-month sentence for this felony assault. Well, he said, this is ridiculous. He appealed it. He appeals it up to the next level and the mid-level courts, and they say that, yes, he was in fear of his life, but this never really applied to a display of a weapon. He said, there's no way, I didn't use it. I just threatened to use it. And this is where we got into some crazy stuff about duty to retreat and some of the laws on use of force. Let's see here. Who we got? Shifty, I say you've wandered on in. Good evening, sir. Hope you're doing wonderfully. And Holly, honestly, I wouldn't mind going after the oil up there. I really wouldn't. Then again, right now, if, we did, our president probably wouldn't want us to drill for it. He's probably got a better deal with some Ukraine energy company, but don't get me started. That's the other channel. We do more politics there. Just a little bit here. We touch on it here. So he said, duty to retreat never responded to just display of a weapon. Now, Minnesota is a duty to retreat state before you use deadly force. And when we get into duty to retreat, we'll back up a little bit. In some states, about 11 of them right now, you have a duty to retreat before using deadly force in self-defense. Not before threatening it, just before using it. Well, they've applied that statute in saying he was using deadly force by the mere presentation of the machete. Now, South Carolina is not like that. I'll tell you which states are. There's only 11 of them. Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, 2 of the other states featured in our content today, Minnesota, New England, New Jersey, New York, and Rhode Island. Those are duty to retreat states, which means that you cannot necessarily stand your ground. Now, they require, if it's possible, for you to retreat from danger before deploying deadly force. Now, ideally, I will say this: good situational awareness, good tactics. Ideally, I'd rather conflict avoidance anytime over deploying deadly force. What I don't like is a jury of 12 people sitting there getting the Monday morning quarterback. Well, maybe he could have run. Well, maybe he couldn't. Well, if he had run, he would have had to leave like a shopping cart full of groceries sitting there. And that's how much, well, yeah, but so then is he using force to protect property? There's a lot of states, 39 of them, that have taken out that duty to retreat. They say if someone comes at you, you have a right to stand your ground. Well, Minnesota, being a duty to retreat state, said that when these 2 people threatened him, waved around a deadly weapon, and threatened to cut his throat, he should have retreated instead of drawing the knife. Now, they say you're not required to retreat if doing so would increase your risk. So now, if the gentleman was armed with a handgun, of course, you can't outrun a bullet, so there'd be no duty to retreat. But with the gentleman being armed with a knife, maybe he could have run away and not had to deploy the machete, not had to pull it out. Yeah, that's where this court decision said. And unfortunately, it was affirmed all the way up to the Minnesota Supreme Court. So again, someone approaches you with a knife, your choice is to run away, and if you can safely do so, define safely do so, but you cannot just stand your ground and stand and fight. You have a duty to be run off from any place. Now, it doesn't really count inside your house, but in any public area. So think, you're walking out of the local shopping center. Someone comes up to you with a weapon. You have a duty to avoid the conflict and run away. Now, ideally, you avoid the conflict. Nobody who is a responsible firearm owner is walking out the door looking for a chance or an opportunity or wants to drop the hammer. No one wants to get into a lethal force encounter. No one with half a brain wants to do that. But to have a prosecutor be able to prosecute you and, well, maybe he could have run away, so therefore his display of force was unreasonable. Now, like I said, there's only 11 states that still have that. The other 39 are stand your ground, and 7 of those are actually considered what we call hard stand your ground, where if you get threatened, the prosecutor can't even mention the possibility of escaping or running away. And if they do, they get their hands slapped pretty hard by the judge. 32 of them, they can mention that maybe there were other options, but they can't really say you should have run away. And 11 of them, they can say, well, why'd you pull the gun on that person? Why didn't you just run away? Well, because I had my groceries. Sorry, that's protecting property, not life. Your life could have been safe if you ran away. Yeah, and he walks away with a cart full of $200 worth of groceries. Yeah, so you go to jail for 39 months. That's assuming you just wave it around, not use it. Folks, Minnesota has really set life back. And, again, it's what you'd expect from some of these states. The gentleman, again, charged with felony assault, went for self-defense. They've gone all the way up to the Supreme Court, and he's been convicted. it may well end up at the National Supreme Court. At what point does someone have the right to literally run you off from a place you have a lawful right to be? Just because you walked on the wrong train platform and he decides he's going to whip out a weapon. So now it's your obligation to get away from them because they're attacking you with a weapon. Well, as we know, the governor of Minnesota is a very, very wonderful 2A supporter. You're, I'm sure, familiar with this gentleman, aren't you, Mel? He's a very, very big proponent of 2A. Let's see if we all remember this gentleman. Anybody want to go with a quick guess? Yeah, that's what we're talking about. Kamala wants to use an executive order to end the Second Amendment, and Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, wants to confiscate all weapons of war, starting with AR-15s. My question is, how would that idiot know what a weapon of war is? Don't get me started. We can go down that road forever. That's, I think, it'll be tomorrow night on the other channel. We're going to be doing a little bit of a deep dive into some of the greatest hits of Timmy Walz because, yeah. Tim, Shifty, don't hold back. Tell us how you really feel. And Mel, you're not allowed to use the word valor in referring to Walz, even though we're talking valor stealing. I know what you're saying. Yeah. Apparently, maybe it's part of the Minnesota runaway from danger law. I don't know. That could explain a lot. Yeah, I'm in rare form tonight, courtesy of Sir Edmund's Oast Brewery in Charleston, South Carolina. So that was our first one. That's out of Minnesota. And again, stand your ground is not designed to have people, go out and play Clint Eastwood, go ahead and make my day, go ahead and do something stupid. No. Ideally, situational awareness, conflict avoidance, you don't get in that situation. What it is designed to do is make it where someone in a self-defense situation doesn't have to analyze, can I outrun this person? I don't know. Kim, you tell me. Can you outrun this attacker? Maybe get away from this attacker? Maybe use some special way to avoid the conflict? Because if you could, then drawing your weapon isn't allowed. And, we all know that defensive display, not actually getting to the point where you drop the hammer, letting this idiot know that he brought a pocket knife or a switchblade to a machete fight, eliminated the problem. Nobody got cut. Nobody was bleeding. No one got hurt. No one died. Personally, a defensive display of your ability to take the idiot on makes sense. But now it's assault. And that, folks, is why you won't catch me within the boundaries of Minnesota. Yeah, I'm sorry, but no way. I'm not going to go to a place where I know I don't have a right to stand my ground, to be able to protect myself and those around me. Doesn't make sense. That's one big one that came out. And let's see, we'll move on to our next story of the evening. This one is out of Maryland. Now, Maryland, as we all know, is another wonderfully blue gun-grabbing facility that tries to call themselves a state. Remember, I think Maryland is where the state prosecutor, state's attorney, just got arrested for a bunch of her scams and everything else, where they tried to do all that stuff. Well, Mary, you make an excellent point. Yeah, run away. And you hope you can run away, because if you can't, then maybe you get the knife in the back, but they can actually sit there and try to make the argument that you could have run away. Again, you have to make that decision in a split second. That's why these stand your ground states said, no, we're not even going to look at that. We're not going to ask somebody who is under attack to start analyzing it in depth like a jury would about, well, I could have done this, or I could have done that, or might have, could have, should have, would have. It's sort of a little bit different there. All right. Oh, good evening. I see Apocryphal World Records has wandered on in. Good evening. Hope you're doing wonderfully this evening. We're just talking about how the great state of Minnesota has fallen into even more disrepair with this wonderful anti-2A decision up there. And now we're going to dig in a little bit to Maryland. Now, a federal appeals court on Tuesday in, I believe it was the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, rejected gun rights arguments that Maryland's 2013 assault weapons ban, I'm just calling it what they call it. Personally, I don't think assault weapons exist any more than assault baseball bats or assault baseball gloves. But this gun law, they've ruled that is unconstitutional under the Second Amendment. Now, the Supreme Court declined to review the case in May when the full Fourth Circuit was still considering it. Maryland officials argued the Supreme Court should defer to the lower court before taking any action. The plaintiffs, however, said that the court was taking too long. Basically, the court was dragging its feet. They knew what the answer was going to be. So there we are. So with the whole situation going on, the argument that it was unconstitutional under the Second Amendment does fit within the history of tradition. The court rejected that argument and has kept it in place. Now, Maryland passed this motion after a 20-year-old gunman killed 20 children and 6 adults at Sandy Hook back in 2012. Again, this was a knee-jerk reaction that was passed, and I'm sure if we look since 2012, or since 2013, since it was passed, I'm sure it has done nothing whatsoever to decrease or dispel any type of violent crime in Maryland. As a matter of fact, I'm sure Baltimore has probably just gotten worse. If you watch the documentary that Lauren Southern did a while back for Timcast Media about Infringed, yeah, catch that video. They filmed part of that in Baltimore, where the police don't even worry about gunshots going off all night long. It's normal. Where her security team and her escorts were told by law enforcement, don't go into certain parts of the city at night because we can't protect you. Yeah. When the police have given up certain parts of their city because they can't protect them, that says a lot about how a city, how a state is being run. But according to this, the judge Harvey Wilkinson wrote in the court's majority opinion, the Maryland law fits comfortably within our nation's tradition of firearms regulation. It is but another example of a state regulating excessively dangerous weapons once their incompatibility with lawful and safe society becomes apparent. So the weapon itself is incredibly dangerous. Well, not particularly. I've got a couple in my bedroom every night when I go to sleep. I've never been attacked by them yet. But they're incompatible with safe society. And it's so interesting reading this. What is the one thing, and you look at it, any one of these firearm laws, any crazy gun law comes out there, what do they always promise? Just give away this chunk of your freedom or this snippet of freedom, or give away this gun, or get rid of this, or get rid of this kind of stock, or this kind of trigger, or get rid of ghost guns because we make them sound scary. Get rid of, any of these things, and we promise you safety. Yeah, let's all do that together. Safety in the land of unicornia. Folks, it doesn't exist. Safety is being able to protect and defend yourself. Safety. I love how we have presidential candidates talking about how safety is a human right. Okay, fine. If I'm going to buy your spiel, safety is a human right. Why can't I have something to keep myself safe? Why can't I have something to be safe? How come, all these laws that they pass, we promise you, we just do this and it'll be safety. And you do it and it doesn't work. And then, you have to do that and you get safety. And then you can get this and it'll be safety. And don't worry, it'll be safe and effective. Yes, as Apocryphal World Record says, don't worry, everything will be safe. Safety does not come from giving up your rights or giving up your right to self-defense. Safety would not come for our gentleman in Minnesota by not having his machete. Had he not had his machete, he likely would have been robbed or got his throat slit on the train tracks. And it would have been one more body in the body count from Minnesota, and nobody ever would have known about it. Bad guys do not obey the law. We kind of know that. Gun-free zones, great place for targets. Has anyone ever heard of someone going to a gun-free zone, seeing the sign on the door and saying, darn it, I was going to do a mass murder today, but maybe I'll go somewhere else? No. I have heard of them go to a place and seen armed guards there and say, I don't want to do that, realizing that their ideal body count probably wasn't going to happen, that they'd go down in a puddle of steaming brass well before it happened. But now, there is a good side to this. They've got overall 9 judges from the Fourth Circuit agreed with the opinion. 5 judges from Virginia-based Court of Appeals joined the dissenting opinion. We're looking at what may well turn into a circuit split on assault weapons bans. Some federal circuit courts are holding them up. Some are knocking them down. Now, the good side about a circuit split is when we have 2 different or 3 different opinions from 3 different federal circuits, typically that ends up with the case going to the Supreme Court, a lot of times getting fast-tracked up to SCOTUS. Why? Because they realize as one country, we can't have one federal court saying X, one federal court saying Y, one federal court saying Z. We need to all get on the same page of the playbook. Given the Supreme Court's recent ruling on Mr. Cargill's bump stocks, given the Supreme Court's recent rulings in Bruin, given the Supreme Court's recent rulings in several 2A cases, this may well be a positive for us, and we'd kind of like to see it. Personally, I know I would. Speaking of Mr. Cargill, just got to give him a quick cameo here, and this is a wonderful piece of, firearms, shall we say, knowledge, education that we can offer, courtesy of Michael Cargill, who was the plaintiff in the Cargill v. Garland bump stock case.
Did you know a gun will not fire unless you pull the trigger? We conducted an in-house study with 3 different firearms to prove this claim. And here are the results. Fire! 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 So having seen the results of our study, we have a simple question. And you can answer in the comment section down below. A gun will not fire unless A, it decides to do so using free will, or B, a human pulls the trigger. As always, more guns equals less crime. Right there and buy yourself a gun.
Yeah, that was Michael Cargill. He, again, was the plaintiff in Cargill v. Garland, the bump stock case. He owned 2 or 3 of the items, and when they were made illegal, he went ahead and turned them over to ATF, but then he filed that lawsuit and was the lead plaintiff on the suit to get them back, so he won that one. And personally, bump stocks are the least of my opinions or my concerns, but again, when we look at some of these issues, anything is an infringement, let's get rid of it. And I also had an interesting video come across my desk. A lot of people say, okay, if you're going to have your ARs, why do you need to have these large capacity magazines? I call them standard capacity. They're standardly what comes with the gun when you buy it at the store, at least in a free state. But a lot of places want to limit you to maybe 10 rounds in a magazine or no more than, 9+1, that type of thing. And on the other side of the coin, I kind of like sometimes having a 30-round mag on an AR or a 15-round mag on my everyday carry pistol. So why would you need that many rounds? I mean, unless I'm planning on going as a mass shooter. Well, here's why you might need those things. Now, could you imagine if you were that store owner staying in that store or trying to keep that store safe or operating that store, and that happened to you and you had 6, 8 shots, yeah. Hope you're pretty good at doing reloads real quickly. Just saying. Observations here. And unfortunately, that's the real world. And it's a crazy real world, but it is what it is. There were over 30 people who came into that store with the alarm going off like crazy. Now, granted, fortunately, they were just looting because there was not a human target there. But if you were that store owner or you ran into that crew and you've got 5 rounds, 10 rounds, yeah, not really. There was also a case recently, I believe it was out of Texas, where 5 gentlemen approached one person trying to carjack him at a gas station. The 2 walked up behind him, 2 or 3 in front of him, produced an edged weapon, and the gentleman produced his concealed carry pistol. Fortunately, he had enough rounds. I don't believe he ended up actually shooting anybody, but they skedaddled rather quickly based on the option of, we don't think we'll do this. Again, had that gone bad, where do we go with this stuff? Is 10 rounds enough? Well, you can look at the many police shootings that the suspect has 4, 5, 6 rounds put in them, and they're alive. If they have 4, 5, 6 rounds put in them and they're still alive, what do you do with 2 or 3 times that many suspects? Again, it is what it is. Moving onwards and upwards, I do have a little bit of a feel-good story, and this one's out of New York. Yeah, I know, New York. How did that happen? Personally, I don't know, but New York City is sort of waking up and smelling the coffee, I think, in the shadow of the Bruen decision, which, as you know, is a New York State Rifle and Pistol v. Bruen. They've got new changes to gun laws in New York City and gun policies in New York City, expanding the ability of non-residents to actually get New York City carry permits. Last week, the NYPD implemented an emergency rule that allows non-residents to apply for concealed carry, citing compliance with the Supreme Court decision, New York Rifle and Pistol v. Bruen. Now, why does this mean anything? I mean, am I going to go get a New York City non-resident pistol permit? No. It does show that NYPD is realizing, oh, wow, maybe some of our draconian laws are crazy. Now, as someone who grew up in New York, just outside the city, even if you had a New York State permit, New York City said it wasn't good in their city. Now, I know that their city was in New York State, but they said they didn't care. There were federal law enforcement officers who would routinely face challenges by NYPD because, as far as they're concerned, their city was always this little world off to itself. The fact that the mindset from NYPD and the mayor has changed to the point of allowing non-residents to apply for carry permits and possibly get them, wow. Yeah. And as Mel points out so astutely, NYPD needs all the help it can get. Yeah, especially right now. They're 25 to 30% down on their force, number one. And number two, a lot of their newcomers are making life really interesting. Just say Venezuelan street gangs. But so they have allowed this, and the Supreme Court decision known as New York Rifle and Pistol v. Bruen in 2022 declared the New York gun law restricting the ability to carry a pistol in public for self-defense as unconstitutional. The law in New York was a century old, and it required people applying for a carry license to prove that they needed it. And that was really interesting. Yes, you have to meet all these requirements and training and background check and fingerprinting and, DNA sample, whatever. Okay. But then you had to prove beyond whatever that person you're proving it to that you deserved it. Now, if you had enough money and made donations to the right political people and everything else, you get a pistol permit and a carry permit, no problem. And if you were not of the right political group or couldn't grease enough wheels, well, maybe you just didn't prove that too well. Just saying. It was a very subjective. The Bruen decision said, no, we cannot have these subjective analysis, and it did it in more than just New York. It needs to be an objective analysis. If you meet these criteria, thou shalt get thy permit. Very simple. You can make the criteria whatever you think is right, but it needs to be reasonable and it needs to be objectively, not just, and you, well, I'm sorry, you just didn't prove it to me you needed to carry. I know you met all the requirements, but you didn't prove it. And that was a lot of where Bruin has come from. Well, little by little, things have gotten to the point now where, the adoption of the emergency rule by New York City Police Department comes as they did not before have a formal procedure for an applicant who did not live in the city or who were employed outside the city. So again, people who lived where I didn't live in the city, couldn't apply for a permit, but they'd be in the city for work every day. Right. Mel, I agree with you, and that is kind of why Bruin went the way it did. Proved they needed it. This little thing called the Constitution. Yes, I totally agree with you. Unfortunately, you see where they were at. Now, delaying the implementation of the additional rules would severely impede New York City's ability to effectively and legally regulate ownership within its jurisdiction. So they've adopted this. Emergency rule sets forward standards to submit and evaluate applications for carry permits by non-residents. NYPD insisted their adoption notice to be transparent. New York City must immediately implement the new rules. Moving a little bit, 2022 decision, we're moving a little bit. In order to maintain a clear and publicly accessible policy, the NYPD must immediately implement an operative concealed carry licensing for non-resident applicants. Again, it's a little bit of a win. Now, you've got to know New York Governor Kathy Hochul is up there right now. I promise you, she's tying a pantyhose into a noose, getting ready to hang herself in the shower over this because she ain't liking it one damn bit. She's the biggest gun grabber up there, and, people are kind of figuring some things out. In addition to opening the door to concealed carry for non-residents with no formal ties, the rule also increased the amount of handguns that one can own per license. Yes, up there you have to get a specific license per each handgun. They're changing that. In addition to changes made to the permit application, and this is a big one, removing a requirement for gun owners to submit social media accounts for government inspection. Yes, before, if you wish to get a permit in New York City, you had to give them a list of every social media account you had, and if you left any off, then it was a felony fraudulent application, and they do jail things and bad things. Remember, New York City was, not a 2A environment. Well, they've gotten rid of that social media requirement. You no longer have to do that. While the Supreme Court ruling was over 2 years ago, recent action to change the laws comes after a lawsuit was filed by GOA, Gun Owners of America, GOF, Gun Owners Foundation, that accused New York's laws of violating non-residents' Second Amendment rights. Those who hold out-of-state driver's licenses may drive in New York, but the exercising of one's constitutional right to bear arms in New York is wholly inaccessible to 94% of Americans who are not New York State residents. New York is one of very few states where non-residents are not allowed to exercise their Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. Now, to me, I think we should have nationwide concealed carry. I've said it forever and a day. If I'm in South Carolina and we will accept New York State driver's licenses and California driver's licenses, why won't they accept my carry permits? But at least we do have 38 states that do, so we'll take that. On August 9th, Gun Owners Foundation celebrated some of the changes to the New York City gun laws where they mentioned in relation to the ongoing lawsuit, NYPD just enacted an emergency rule to allow non-residents to apply for carry permits, and the Gun Owners Federation recently filed a lawsuit against upstate New York seeking non-resident permits for that area also. I mean, honestly, I would love to just apply and see what they made me do, and if they turn me down, I could definitely be a plaintiff for GOF or GOA and say that I wanted to go back to visit New York City and they violated my Second Amendment rights, and therefore we want to do some bad things. We want to get them sued. But the GOA described the move as New York City as a major win for Second Amendment advocates, also celebrating the removal of the social media submission stuff. Second Amendment says shall not be infringed. Not please submit all social media accounts when asking your permission to bear arms. So yeah, definitely a couple of big wins in New York, and the GOA again is gloating on this. It's great news for the untold millions of Americans who either work or visit New York every year. It's critical that everyone can exercise their inherent right to self-defense, but until now, anti-gunners in New York denied 94% of Americans that basic right. While he was celebratory in his comments about changes, he insisted that the organization would still remain vigilant to ensure that permits are being issued in a timely and non-onerous manner. He also warned NYPD that if permits were not handed out to his satisfaction, he would gladly file another lawsuit with the NYPD and Mayor Eric Adams as defendants. So we can actually still have, a little bit of a win on that one. Folks, again, it is what it is. We know that, we're not going to win everything, but if we can win some things, we'll take it. If we can win, here and there, we'll take it. I don't know. We kind of wonder after a while. Folks, I will say, if you do appreciate what we're doing, please follow the channel, share it out with your friends. We try to put up content here at least once a week. I know I've been a little bit of a slack ass recently. That's just basically been work stuff and, kind of a crazy schedule. There's also been a lot of stuff going on with the election and political stuff on the other channels. So I've been doing a lot over there. But I don't mean to let this channel slide or be a lazy bum or anything else. Before we go any further, I do want to definitely give a big shout out to some wonderful people who are great for supporting us and supporting Rumble. Chris Pavlovsky, his crew at Rumble have done an absolutely wonderful job. They really do. They make doing this so much easier and so much more worthwhile. We do the best we can as far as, putting out content. But for small streamers, small creators, Rumble has been fantastic. We're actually using the Rumble Design Studio here, and it is really nice. And, again, Chris and Elon from Twix or Twitter, they're in the process of trying to push back a little bit on some of the YouTube monopoly on everything, because you know what? Even they realize that this is just not right, that we need to all have a voice and all be able to have a voice. So we'll definitely take that. Alrighty. And we're going to get into our last one here, and this one's out of Massachusetts. But before we do, just got to throw this one up here. One of my favorite questions I get asked all the time is, how many kids have to get murdered before you'll give up your guns? You don't care about kids getting murdered. Now, remember, we did a show about school shootings. Now, they're tragic. They're awful. They're amazingly infrequent compared to what the media would have you believe. And typically, less than 50 children die in school each year. Now, I don't mean to downplay that number, and the number 50 is a big number, especially to those parents. But when you consider 50 deaths a year, there's more in swimming pools. There's more in school buses, probably. We definitely know, with watching all this stuff with these teachers getting arrested, there's many, many more kids getting diddled in school than there are getting shot. We're just going to call that one out for what it is. But amazingly, again, the emotional impact of, oh, kids, won't you think of the children? Okay, here's my answer to that. Put that one up. How many more kids have to be murdered before you surrender your guns? Well, I don't know. How many women have to be raped before you get castrated? Well, I'm not a rapist. Yeah, and I'm not a murderer. So there you go. Yeah, kiss my ass. Folks, let's face it. If the mere act of carrying a firearm makes me a murderer, makes me a school shooter, makes me some sort of danger to society, well, then perhaps the mere act of Kamala going out in public with a hoo-ha would make her a prostitute. Okay, never mind. Bad example. Damn it. Oops, I let that slip. But yeah, it is what it is, folks. But yeah. Oh, yes. Oh, we all know, Holly. If it saves one life, if it saves one life, I understand. But okay. Mel, I'm probably going to be doing it on the political channel tomorrow night just to save it for that because I don't want to get a copyright strike. Hey, there's one for you. Folks, if you're not familiar, Bill Dozer is out here. His channel is Bill Dozer 74. He sort of wandered on in to say hello. So we always appreciate hearing from him. Check him out. You're welcome again. As always, throw your stuff up in the chat. I'll be doing political tomorrow night. So we're just sort of having fun and games tonight, getting some gun stuff in because I've been kind of slack on the 2A stuff recently. And yeah, I believe mandatory carry coming soon. That's fine. I could deal with that. You'd be surprised. I'd be like, yeah. Honestly, it's, you mean like mandatory 2, then that would be fair, I mean, just 1. I mean, come on. You got to have a backup. Or at least, what, a pistol caliber carbine in the car? AR pistol with a folding stock and 300 triple blackout. Yeah. I'm good with it. So, yeah, this latest one comes out of Massachusetts. And unfortunately, the 3 M's today, Minnesota, Maryland, Massachusetts, not really proving. I mean, it's really bad when New York City is doing better things with guns than Maryland, Massachusetts, and Minnesota. But they are. And to think to me again, I've got family from up in there. My brother lives in Massachusetts. And looking up there, how proud they are about the history of Lexington and Concord, where farmers, citizens, blacksmiths, laborers got together and told the tyrannical government to go shove their tea where the king's sun don't shine. And what cucks they've become since then. It really is sad. Honestly, there's another one. Can we work out a trade? We'll give Canada Minnesota, we'll throw in Massachusetts, and we'll take Alberta. I could do that. As long as you don't try to give me anything around Montreal or that area, I'm fine with it. We'll take the western side. I hear you, sir. Hope you have a wonderful night. Be safe and get lots and lots of biggie tips. Folks, always remember, there's guys like Bill who's out here busting his ass doing the dash. So, if you do order DoorDash, take care of your folks when they bring you your snack. Because let's face it, it saves you from putting on pants and having to go find your own food. So, always make sure to tip them well. But on to Massachusetts. This was last week. Governor Maura Healey, Maura. When your name is Maura, do we not kind of get a vibe that it's going to be not the greatest to begin with? Signed into law called an Act Modernizing Firearms Laws. Yeah. The state's most significant gun safety legislation in a decade. The bill was passed by the legislature as a result of the NY Rifle and Pistol v. Bruin. Yeah, basically, the minute that came out, every state went crazy because they realized federal law was kind of on the chopping block. Now, the article here claims, and I have to admit, the article has a wee bit of a political slant on it. It's from mass.gov. So it was written by libturds for libturds about libturds. But it modernizes Massachusetts' existing firearm laws to address such issues as untraceable ghost guns, 3D printed guns, which is just another kind of ghost gun, truthfully. Homemade guns, there you go. Enhance our red flag law. Further protect safety in public spaces. They're promising you safety again. Just give up some more of your rights and we can all have safety. Yeah. Oh, by the way, cars are really bad. So we're going to put governors on your cars to keep you at 20 miles an hour. It's all for safety. And like Holly says, if it saves just one life, yeah, safety and unicornia don't exist. But Massachusetts is proud of our strong gun laws, but there's always more work to be done. There's always more freedom to be taken. Yes, we're proud of our strong gun laws, but you have a few civil rights left, so government's coming, baby. Yeah. Legislation updates our firearms laws in response to the Supreme Court's misguided Bruin decision that respected the Second Amendment. So the governor says that the Supreme Court is misguided. They gave you rights, and, well, Mama Mora got to take them away. Yeah, just like Big Daddy Tim. Speaking of Big Daddy Tim, folks, someone please throw me a link in the chat if you can find the article about the horse stuff that he supposedly drank a gallon of. I'm working on that one for the political show tomorrow night on the other channel. It cracks down on ghost guns, 3D printed weapons, which I've long advocated for. She doesn't know anything about what she's talking about. Enhances our ability to prevent guns from falling into dangerous hands. Maura, go walk the street in downtown Dorchester. Go walk the street in downtown Boston on some of the rough areas at night and tell me if you feel like this made it safer. No, leave your carry and your security detail at home. And you say, this place ain't any safer. You're right, it isn't. But we promised you safety. Just give up some more rights. It invests in our communities to address the root causes of violence. Yeah, lack of punishment. The law will save lives, and I'm grateful to the legislature and gun safety advocates for their hard work and seeing this through. Gun technology and trends are constantly evolving. It's important that our laws evolve along with them, said Lieutenant Governor Kim Driscoll. Is that a chick too? I mean, Kim could be male or female. Someone let me know in the chat. Kim Driscoll, Lieutenant Governor of Massachusetts. Ladies, I'm about to get real misogynist here with Mama Mora and Sister Kimmy. The law will make our communities safer by preventing violence in the first place and improving law enforcement's ability to respond to gun crimes. Okay, how are we going to do that? How? A lot of wonderful stuff there. We're going to prevent violence and do all these great things. As a former prosecutor, I have experienced firsthand the devastating impacts of gun violence on victims, families, and communities. Emotional appeal, untraceable firearms like ghost guns and 3D printed weapons pose a tremendous risk to public safety, and our laws must evolve to stop the proliferation of these dangerous weapons. Now, people weren't doing much with 3D printing or ghost guns until about the last 5 years or so. They were there, but it was much more on the fringe, has become more mainstream. So have things gotten that bad in the last 4 or 5 years? I was watching something today where the vice president told me that crime is at an all-time low. Would you believe that if you want? Massachusetts leads on responsible gun safety, and today with the governor's signature, we cement that leadership even further. Okay, this must be Kim who's ball washing the governor. The strength of the legislature's bill comes from our collaboration with stakeholders on every side of this topic, which will ultimately protect our residents from gun crime, modernize our laws, and save lives. Senate President Karen E. Spilika, and that's a Democrat. Okay, we haven't found out about Kim yet, but so far I'm guessing Senate President Karen. Really? This stuff writes itself sometimes, folks. It really does. I'm grateful for Governor Healey's signature on our partnership with the House in advancing these responsible, common sense safety measures. Oh, it's common sense safety. Well, of course. Then they're all okay, right? Yes. This legislation is the most significant gun safety reform package that Massachusetts has seen in a decade. It's the culmination of a multi-year process that began once the Supreme Court's conservative supermajority issued their disastrous Bruin decision, a ruling that undermined our laws and threatened the safety of our residents. I want to look at stats. pre-Bruin and post-Bruin. I'm guessing there was no change in their residents' safety. Here. And the Commonwealth's gun laws generally process that resulted in a historic bill passed last October, said House Speaker Ronald J. Marino. Ronald, I don't know, but I'm kind of thinking these three chicks got you cocked, bro. While the Commonwealth's existing gun laws have made Massachusetts one of the safest states in the nation, relative success is never a cause for complacency. So just because we're successful, you still got a few rights left. Give me those rights. Yeah, we all know how this is working out. But I'm grateful to Chairman Day and the members of the conference committee for their tireless work on this issue, as I'm confident that these reforms will make the Commonwealth safer. The legislation reflects the input many, including law enforcement officials, community advocates, gun owners, and healthcare workers. Now, I'm a healthcare worker. I've been involved in healthcare for just a couple of years of my life. I have never come out pro-gun. They will use some healthcare people talking about violence that they see in the ER to manipulate them into now saying all healthcare workers are anti-gun. Trust me, they're not. I know when I go to the doctor, we chat about what he had to do to renew his concealed carry permit. That's why he's my doctor. Today, let's see, we take the lead, making the Commonwealth a safer place, giving law enforcement the tools they need to go after ghost guns, keeping battlefield weapons out of our neighborhoods. There's not a battlefield weapon in our neighborhoods. Hyperbolic bullshit. And keep our schools, homes, town halls, and polling locations safe. Show me an attack at a polling location. They're forecasting and saying, we're going to prevent something that's not happened or anything, but we can pass this law and we can prevent it. Well, it wasn't happening already. Hush, just give us your freedoms. Give. The legislation tracks down on ghost guns, which are homemade weapons that do not have a serial number and thus are untraceable, and 3D guns, which are made with a 3D printer. The legislation enhances the firearms statute to combat ghost guns by requiring the Department of Criminal Justice Information Service to develop and maintain a real-time electronic firearms registration system, and requiring that all firearms manufactured or assembled in Massachusetts be registered. Folks, those of y'all who have more than two brain cells rubbing together under the shady tree, how many gangbangers, criminals, murderers, gas station robbers do you think are going to say, oh, gee, got to go register my pistola? You really think it? Are we thinking that Pookie and Ray Ray are going down to register those 4 or 5 guns they stole out of cars outside Fenway Park in the last 6 months? I'm betting they didn't. You see, because gun control laws only affect the people who obey the law. So I'm guessing the bad guys aren't registering their stuff. It also requires firearms to be serialized and registered, and prohibits unlicensed individuals from using 3D printers to manufacture firearms. Okay. No offense, Massachusetts, but how do you know what they're doing on a 3D printer? I mean, it's illegal if they get caught doing it, but most criminals will do it and not care about getting caught. The legislation adds new language criminalizing the creation, sale, or transfer of untraceable firearms, and imposes a sentence of 1 to 5 years. The legislation also strengthens the state's extreme risk protection order statute, a red flag law, and takes additional steps to prevent guns from falling into the wrong hands. It clarifies that under red flag laws, a person who has had their firearm license revoked cannot obtain a new license or ID card while the risk protection or the red flag is in place. It also expands who can seek an extreme risk protection order to include licensing authorities, law enforcement agencies, healthcare providers, family members, or household members. So if your roommate decides that you don't need your firearms anymore, he or she could call, drop a dime, and you lose them. If your ex-wife or ex-husband decides that they want you defenseless, they can go ahead, make a phone call. The police will come and take all of your weapons away. And that way, if your ex decides to break into the house at O'Dark 100, he doesn't have to worry about being shot. Seems like it's going to make life safer. Additionally, let's see here. Prohibits the issuance of a license to carry a machine gun, except for firearms instructors and bona fide collectors, and criminalizes the possession of sale of parts intended to make weapons more lethal by adding them to the machine gun statute. So they basically, even though the Supreme Court just said bump stocks do not equal machine guns, Massachusetts wrote a law and said, yeah, bump stock makes it a machine gun. This includes automatic parts, bump stocks, rapid fire trigger activators, trigger modifiers. Also seeks to further enhance safety in public spaces by criminalizing possession of government buildings, most are already, courts. We all have metal detectors going into courts. They're writing stuff that's totally unnecessary, but to make it look like common sense. And election or polling areas. Understanding early intervention and community programming can be effective in stopping gun violence before it happens. The legislation creates a Violence Prevention Federal Reinvestment Trust Fund. Yeah, we're going to take some money. Operated by the Executive Office of Health and Human Services. I'm sure that's probably $1 million in budgets and salary and everything else. They never run out of money to spend when it's other people's money. The legislation also takes significant action to update the state's firearm registration, licensing, and possession laws, as well as enhancing firearm data collection, analysis, and publication. Governor Healy plans to hold a ceremonial signing of the bill next week. Yeah. Well, Massachusetts, gotta say, you've truly, you've had to scrape the barrel on this one. I looked it over at one point. It was between, I think the original was 82 pages, and it got up to about 100 pages with footnotes and stuff, 112 pages. A lot of the stuff that they've already got in there, criminalizing machine guns and, you can't carry in a government building. Okay. But the firearm registration, the making a lot of guns that were legal 6 months ago, illegal now, and telling people they either had to take it to a licensed dealer and sell it. Well, suppose you take a $1,000 rifle to a licensed dealer. You've got a lot of work and parts in. It's a good rifle, working order, and everything else. And the government says you either sell it or you go to jail for 10 years. And the guy offers you $200 for it. Do you sell it? Your choice. Sell it or felony. They're actually trying, there were people talking about the other day trying to get their guns out of state. It was definitely a very bad situation up there in Massachusetts. Again, the history of independence and freedom from Lexington and Concord and the late night ride of Paul Revere, 1 if flying land, 2 if by sea, and 3 if you just want to drop your weapons and have safety. The Boston Tea Party has become, Tampon Tim's Tea Party. Not really a good thing in my book. And it's sad because, again, I've got friends up there, family up there. I've been around up there, and watching this get so ridiculous because, again, they always say, well, it's for safety. It's for safety. It's for safety. Okay. We're going to govern every car to no more than 30 miles an hour, and that's okay. It'll be for safety. Well, hello there, stranger. I haven't seen you in a while, Mr. Roy. Hope you're doing well. Roy also has a channel over here in the Rumbleverse. He's into all sorts of wonderful, creepy, crawly critters, and if you want to learn more about spider habitats, he's one you can definitely check out. We're just talking about Massachusetts' latest assault on the constitutional freedoms that actually started at Lexington, Concord, and now have seemed to have gone south for the winter because they passed 100 and something pages of gun control. All righty, folks. I have enjoyed it tonight. I hope you have too. I know I'm going to be back tomorrow night, hopefully over on the political channel over on Real Hard Truths. If you want to check us out over there, it is YouTube exclusive, and I'll be very honest with you why. Because over there, I'm not quite as politically correct as I am here. Over here, I try to be just a hair politically correct. Over there, when I get into something, I really, sort of let fly. Before we sign out, though, I do want to definitely leave this one up there. I want to remind us of our dear brother Dexter, who is still in a New York jail. He's been incarcerated since May 14th of 2024 for the mere act of trying to learn to build firearms while living in Communist City, New York. They are still working on appeals for him. If you want to do something, again, we've got their Give, Send, Go up. We've got all that there. They've got I Stand With Dexter t-shirts that Angel was putting out. I believe they're still doing that. So definitely, we try to do what we can for Dex because, again, total craziness. But yeah, here's the link to the Rumble exclusive channel over there. We do a bunch of stuff there, so I always try to have a little bit of fun with it and see what we can get into. Political topics. Again, I try to keep minimal politics here. They're going to slip out every now and again, but after all, I try my best to do that. So, folks, I definitely appreciate it. As Roy says, California is communist. Massachusetts is fascist socialism. They've gotten crazy. It's definitely Rumble exclusive tomorrow night on Real Hard Truths. We don't even have that channel over there just because, this one is not pretty much. Most everything I say there would get me shut down in YouTube in a 5 seconds. So I try to avoid it as much as I possibly can. I'll leave you with the, how about this one? Kamala Harris on gun control.
Adding to your gun control agenda? Yeah, I think it's a great idea. But listen, I don't think we lack for great ideas. As I've said many times, we've been having great ideas for decades. The problem is that Congress has not had the courage to act. And that is why, from the beginning, I have said, my agenda includes attempting to get Congress to act, but if they don't within the first 100 days of my administration, I'm going to take executive action. Because what we need is action.